Okay. Oh, sure. You want me? Okay. You need me all the time. Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
All right, it is 29. I would like to call the meeting to order. All right, we're here this afternoon to consider 3 categorical challenges to the qualifications of more than 700 voters. All 3 challenges were filed by Mr. David Summerall. The first issue to be determined in this type of challenge is whether the challenger is an elector of Bibb County. We have confirmed that Summerall is in fact a registered voter in the county and therefore authorized to bring these challenges. The second issue that we must determine is whether the challenged voters were mailed notice of this hearing within 3 days. Mr. Gillian can confirm that. Okay, that this was done. The challenges were initiated when the challenger emailed 3 lists of challenged voters to the Board of Elections. So there are 3 different cases, and we will hear them, we will listen to them separately. The first list is a list of 159 voters allegedly using the same street address as Mercer's main campus. The second one is a list of 49 voters who are allegedly registered to post office boxes or UPS stores. The third one is a list of 585 voters who allegedly have moved out of the state of Georgia. In a moment of a challenge, the challenger will be given the opportunity to present his case. Pursuant to Georgia law, the burden of proof is on the challenger to prove that each person being listed or challenged is not qualified to stay on as an elector in Bibb County. The board will then determine whether the burden has been met. Are there any voters present and on the list of challenged voters? Are there any in the room at this time? If any do come, the voters will be given an opportunity to respond to the challenge. If you receive the challenge notice or letter and you are present today, if you receive the challenge letter and you are present today, please make sure you have signed the list of challenged voters. Did she sign the list? Each person on the list will be given an opportunity to address the board. The board may ask questions of the challenger or the challenged voter. Once the challenges and responses have been made, the board will review the challenges and make decisions. Once the taking of evidence is concluded, the board will conduct its deliberation and make a final decision without any further input from any parties or the public. Everyone here is welcome to observe the process, but it is very important that the board only consider what is being presented without further input from the public. Some things that I want you all to keep in mind. When it comes to residency challenges, the board must adhere to the terms and provisions of the National Voting Registry Act, NVRA. The NVRA is a federal law that does not allow the board to simply remove voters from a registry based on challenged addresses. There's an involved procedure that must be followed to avoid violating any ordinances or acts.
Madam Chairperson, since you said that that everybody was welcome, is there any way you could move this, because there's a whole line of people out there, so that they could be actually welcomed in to observe these procedures? And that's just a request that I'm making. And the people who are in here, if we could get some chairs in here, if you're not going to move it, so they can be seated. Thank you.
Well, are there any chairs? Unfortunately, this challenge is brought on at the beginning of voting. So we were gonna hold it out in the lobby, but we can't because there's active voting and we don't have any other space. Trust me, I was here Friday trying to figure that out. We don't have any other space. Yeah, yes. He's gonna see if there's some chairs as well. I know it. Are there any more voters who are on the roll that are present? If not, I have 3 seats right here. Okay. It's not a lot, so they could probably. It's good.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm about to say. Got it. Okay.
Okay, let's please stay in order at this time. Mr. Noel.
Okay, so at this time, what we'll do without further preamble is turn it over to the challenger, Dr. Summerall. And I understand you're represented by counsel, and if you'd rather have counsel present your challenge, either one can do it.
Kind of summary as for the board to help follow along. Are you?
Oh, they want.
Okay. Yeah. You would like to-
Oh, we have one, thank you. Let me take your last one.
All right. Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Let me express my appreciation to the Board of Elections for following the law and giving me the opportunity to present 3 voter challenges, voter address challenges today. And you may ask what I'm trying to accomplish with these challenges. My purpose is simply to help move us toward the cleanest voter roll possible, which lists only lawful voters. Every unlawful vote dilutes the vote of a lawful voter. My hope is that every voter on the list I've submitted will list the legal permanent address in which they live and vote accordingly. I am actually happy that some of the voters are here today, so maybe we can get their correct legal permanent address. My focus is on valid residential addresses. In no way am I accusing the voters involved of any intent to do wrong, nor am I saying the Bibb County Board of Elections has done anything wrong. The voters on the list represent a diverse group of demographic categories, including Republicans, Democrats, and unaffiliated voters. I appreciate the diligence of the Bibb County Board of Election employees and their willingness to try to do what is right. The voter roll problems appear to be systemic and may require legislative or judicial action. But as a voter in Bibb County, I feel responsible to try to correct the problems I see. And I would ask the Board of Elections to join me to make our voter rolls as clean as possible. If any voter on the list provides a residential address in which they live in Bibb County, I ask my challenge to be withdrawn for that voter because I want them to be able to vote in the precinct where they live. Now, what do I mean by a lawful voter? The Georgia Code lists the following qualifications. A, no person shall vote in any primary election held in this state unless such person shall be 1, registered as an elector in the manner prescribed by law. 2, a citizen of this state and of the United States. 3, at least 18 years of age on or before the date of the primary or election in which such person seeks to vote. 4, a resident of this state and of the county or municipality in which she or he seeks to vote, which is the one I am centering on. 5, possessed of all other qualifications prescribed by law. I'm not challenging any qualification of the voters on my list except the residency requirement. My challenge today applies to 3 different set of voters as have been described. Voters who have a listed post office or UPS center as their residence, voters who have listed Mercer University Student Center as their residence, or voters who have filed a USPS change of address form indicating their permanent residence is in another state, including most of whom have registered to vote in another state, and many of whom have voted in another state. For these challenges, the qualifications for a voter under Georgia law apply, especially those which deal with residency. In the Georgia Code, it lists the rules for determining residence. 1, the residence of any person shall be held in that place in which such person's habitation is fixed, without any present intention of removing therefrom. 2, a person shall not be considered to have lost such person's residence who leaves such person's home and goes into another state or county or municipality in this state for temporary purposes only, with the intention of returning, unless such person shall register to vote or perform other acts indicating a desire to change such person's citizenship and residence. Then under the number 4, if a person removes to another state with the intention of making it such person's residence, such person shall be considered to have lost such person's residence in this state. 5, if a person removes to another state with the intention of remaining there for an indefinite time and making such state such person's place of residence, such person shall be considered to have lost such person's residence in this state, notwithstanding that such person may intend to return at some indefinite future period of time. Number 7, last part, no person shall be deemed to have gained or lost a residence by reason of such person's presence or absence while enrolled as a student in any college, university, or other institution of learning in this state.
For the record, that was number 6, not 7. That was part of number 6.
Numbers, okay, I think it's actually, then I must have taken one out that I wasn't going to refer to, and it reads numbers automatically.
It is 6. It is 6.
Okay. All right. The next one, if a person, 12, if a person goes into another state and while there exercises the right of a citizen by voting, such person shall be considered to have lost such person's residence in this state.
Let the record show that's number 11.
Is that 11? Okay. Minor reading number is probably an automatic numbering.
And the last one's 13, signature about it.
Okay, number 13. For voter registration purposes, the Board of Registrars, and for candidacy residency purposes, the Secretary of State, election superintendent, or hearing officer may consider evidence of where the person receives significant mail, such as personal bills and any other evidence that indicates where the person resides. Now, according to case law, county registrars may determine whether residence requirements are met. County registrars are free to take reasonable and adequate steps to see that all applicants for the right to register to vote actually fulfill the requirements of bona fide residence. In McCoy versus McElroy, it states, as the Supreme Court of the United States has emphasized, the defendants' registrars are free to take reasonable and adequate steps, as have other states, to see that all applicants for the right to register to vote actually fulfill the requirements of bona fide residence. Registrars, in Carrington versus Rash, registrars and Georgia have the power to require that voters be bona fide residents of the relevant political subdivision. In accordance with Georgia Code, the Board of Registrars of each county shall have the right and shall be charged with the duty of examining the qualifications of each elector of the county. There was a Georgia State Election Board hearing on April 3, 2018. In the minutes, you read this exchange between Judge Simpson and the Georgia Secretary of State's Chief Investigator, Russell Lewis. Judge Simpson said, "I think it's very clear in the law that you have to have a physical address to vote. You can't use a post office box. Isn't that correct?" Mr. Lewis says, "Yes, sir, that is correct." Judge Simpson says, "In the past, we have had cases where election officials have allowed people to vote based on post office box. And you can't tell where they are living in a precinct for the candidate for whom they vote. I think we do not need to begin down a path which will allow additional fraud in the voting process. I think the law says we have to have a physical address. If we are going to have fair and equal elections, we have to follow the laws we have on the book," unquote. Additionally, Chris Harvey, Georgia Secretary of State Elections Director, said in that same hearing, "The voter registration system is designed so that their addresses are recognized as either residential or commercial. And it is designed to prevent somebody from being registered at a commercial address." So the Bibb County Board of Elections has the duty to determine whether voters meet the residency requirements under Georgia law and to protect the integrity of our elections from unlawful votes. I'm not questioning the intent of the voters who listed address in which no one lives, or those who remain on our voter list, even though they have filed a written document with the United States Postal Service indicating that they have moved their permanent residence to another state, and most of whom have registered to vote in another state, and many of whom have voted in another state. I am challenging the qualifications of these voters to remain on our list without showing in what precinct they live, given they have established no domicile in Georgia or have moved their domicile to another state as indicated by a change of address form and registering to vote in another state. How do we know what ballot to give them if we don't know where they live? My desire is not to take away their vote, but to ensure that they vote where they are lawfully allowed to vote. I had it in a different order, but I understand you want to do Mercer University first, so I will go with that.
It's just up to you.
Okay.
I just read them in
They
that
just said they
order.
would be separate.
Okay.
Yeah, just meant that.
They are. I started with, I think is the easiest one. The USPS, UPS commercial addresses. I'm challenged the invalid addresses of a list of 48 voters because they are registered at post offices or UPS stores and cannot live at those places. Therefore, you cannot determine what precinct they live in and who they are allowed to vote for. You have the proof on our own voter roll that these voters are incorrectly registered at a commercial address and not a residence in which they live. These voters must be registered where they are a legal permanent resident. 39 of these voters are on the active list, but we don't know in what precinct they really should be registered. These voters should be disqualified until they can provide a residential address as their permanent address and domicile. I am withdrawing my challenge to 2720 Riverside Drive, room 320 address, because it applies to the Red Roof Inn at that address. That's where our headquarters used to be. That was a shopping center. It's all been torn down except for the hotel. But although that voter likely doesn't live there anymore, voters with addresses at hotels are not the subject of this challenge. So I ask you to withdraw the challenge to that particular voter.
Was it room 314?
320.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I believe that was a shopping center.
That's the substance of my argument. I have here, if you're interested, I have, like the list on Google of the addresses of post offices and UPS centers. If you'd like to have that and enter that into evidence. Or if you want the particular addresses that I listed on that spreadsheet also lined up with those two particular ones. And so if you're wanting to take them one at a time, that's the substance of my argument. for the voters that are assigned, that are registered at post offices or UPS centers.
No, question though, this information, where is this information coming from? What reliable source is the information coming from?
Well, if you consider our voter rolls, we'll have all that coming from our voter rolls. You can get a spreadsheet of the voter rolls and you can sort by any address and you can see who's at the address.
And the reason I'm asking is because none of these sheets have, listed organization like the Secretary of State or anything like that, so that's why, because anybody can make a spreadsheet.
They're coming from our voter rolls. You can verify that with the voter rolls, I'm sure, here in this office.
Any more questions about the post office? Is it anyone here on this list from the post office boxes that wants to speak? Any questions from the board?
I mean, I'd like to go ahead and handle all of these, hear the arguments, and then, you know, deliberate and take action, but I'm willing to yield to my colleagues as well.
That's fine, we'll do this, that's fine.
On
Go ahead.
to the next one. For the Mercer University.
Excuse me, but we will act on it
Separately, yes, sir.
For Mercer University Student Center. Again, as Elector in Bibb County, I'm challenging the invalid address of the submitted list of 159 voters. Again, these were from the Bibb County voter roll, because they cannot be residents of the Mercer University Student Center, which is at 1501 Mercer University Drive, a commercial address. 111 are on the active list, 19 have mailing addresses listed in other places than the Student Center. One registration dates all the way back to 2004. 101 were registered before 2020. I was myself a Mercer University student who frequented the Mercer Student Center daily and had post office box 1066. I remember it to this day because I checked it every day. I voted in the 1980 election for George and Jimmy Carter while at Mercer, but I voted on a notarized absentee ballot sent from Mississippi where I was a legal permanent resident, which did not change because I was a resident student at Mercer, just like the Georgia law said. It would not have even entered my mind to call home the Mercer Student Center. I lived in the dormitories for 4 years, but other students lived off campus and had student boxes also at the Student Center. Then I graduated and moved back to Mississippi. Everyone I knew lived on Mercer's main campus, lived there for no more than a few years. No one lived at the Mercer Student Center, and no one has their permanent domicile there today. These voters must be registered where they are a legal permanent resident, so they can lawfully vote in their home precinct and help to ensure no double vote or other unlawful vote occurs. The Mercer website says the University Center, quote, is a $40 million, 230,000 square foot structure on the university's Macon campus. Brings students together for recreational, intramural, and wellness activities as well as athletic events. It includes the Hawkins Arena, an athletic area, Heritage Hall with historical exhibits, indoor and patio seating, a food court, the president's dining room, an aerobics room, a boardroom, and other amenities. It is a commercial building, not a residence. Mercer's current catalog states, quote, all students are assigned a campus mailbox. Official mail from the university to the student will be sent to the campus box with the exception of semester billing statements, which are normally mailed to the permanent home address. Students are expected to check their campus box regularly for official university correspondence. Additionally, in the catalog, it says the university has a 3-year housing requirement. Housing is not guaranteed for seniors, the 4th year. All freshmen, 1st year, sophomore, 2nd year, junior, 3rd year students under 22 years of age are required to live on campus and purchase a meal plan. Exceptions include those students who will reach age 22 before the first day of fall classes. Those living with parents or guardians within a reasonable commuting distance, defined as either living within 40 miles of the campus or living in one of the following counties: Bibb, Crawford, Houston, Jones, Monroe, Peach, and Twiggs. And students who are married or are single parent. Residential students are required to sign a resident hall contract for each academic year. Clearly, Mercer's housing is limited to a few years, and the university does not consider their P.O. box at the student center the permanent address of the student. That concludes my challenge to the Mercer address.
Madam Chairman, are we to ask questions at the end?
You can ask a question as he finishes each one, and I do have a question. In your research, did you notice on Mercer's website where it says all Mercer students have a campus mailbox to receive campus and postal mail? Your name and Mercer University's post office box number 1501 Mercer University Drive, Macon, Georgia. And if you look on their website, also there was some investigation done on our part. One of the faculty members is on that list. So I just want you to know, keep that in mind. One of the faculty members was on that list, and we were able to reach out to that faculty member, and they indeed live on campus. And we were told by their legal and everybody else that that is the official Mercer address. You have a question?
I don't have a question.
That was a statement. I asked you, did you look? My question was, did you look on the website and see how it lists the addresses? That was my question.
I did look at the website, and the same post office boxes for the other post offices apply. It's a post office box. Nobody, even a faculty member, does not live at the student center. They live in a dormitory, they live in an apartment, they live in a house, they don't live at the student center. Yes.
If you go to the tax assessor's office, which I do, you type in the address 1501 Mercer Drive, things have changed.
Yeah.
And now 50 or 60 buildings show up. Mercer has changed your address
Yeah.
to 1501 Mercer University Boulevard. And every building on that campus shows up under the tax address. It's 1501. Do you have any evidence whatsoever that any of these people are not registered to vote in Bibb County lawfully, which a student can do if they declare this to be their home residence? Do you have any other evidence that any of these people are voting out of precinct?
Well, the evidence is what I have stated,
So
that,
your evidence is that.
right, 1501. If they live at a domicile at 1501 Mercer University Drive, there is a way to list exactly where they live, so that can be verified, whether it's a dormitory or whether it's a housing, or there are subdivisions on that. Otherwise, nobody would know where to live.
So the only evidence you have presenting us is that was address, and that you don't know whether these people have legally changed their resident address to 1501, because that is the legal address.
I would just dispute it's a legal residential address. But that's it. So that's the substance of my, that's the substance of my,
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'll
Is there anybody
I'll
here
hold
from
mine
Mercer?
till the conclusion of the presentation.
Anybody here from
Yes,
Mercer?
there's somebody.
Okay, so someone is here from Mercer. You may speak, please, your name.
Margaret Royakers. I'm not sure exactly how my name shows up on.
What did you say your last name was?
Royakers, ROO. YS. Very long section.
Okay, we got you. Mhm.
Uh,
And your address shows as 1501 Mercer University Drive, Macon, Georgia, 31207. You're registered in Godfrey 1. 226. Okay, that's how your address reads, okay? And they show your congressional district as 2.
I mean, that's where you live.
Where do you live on that campus?
Yeah, I live in one of the apartment buildings, on campus, and so, but I get my mail there, my bills go there, and so for all intents and purposes.
And I think that's done too for the intents and purposes of safety of the children. So no one can actually figure out where these children are, because there are some adults, I understand, that live on campus and they have the same address. Thank you so much, Ms. Roy.
Anyone else, Marcy?
Anyone else?
I did have a clarifying question. I believe the University Center was built recently, so, in some of your context, are you referring to the Connell Student Center? Or are you referring regardless to the University Center?
University, he's talking about where the basketball is and the student center, the activity and all the rest of it. That's what he's speaking.
Because I've lived on campus with the exception of 1 year since 2015. So a little over almost 10 years now. And back when I first started at the university as a student, so we have our PO boxes in the Connell Student Center. They only recently moved to the University Center, so, which I think aligns with the change of address.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay.
I think, can I ask something? This has nothing to do with, well, in a way. What if you have to call an ambulance and you tell me at 1501, how do they find you? It's just because my.
I'm sorry.
And I'll be back on that.
I mean, I'm just curious.
So we just can't have questions from the audience, but just it's only.
Yeah, that's something you would have to take up with Mercer. We don't work for them. She does, but we don't. Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay, your last one, thank you.
We'll move on to the last one, move to a new statement. I challenge the voter registration of the attached list that I sent, 584 voters, because they're residents in another state, as indicated by the written United States Postal Service change of address form listing their new address. Under the law, you must remove voters who do not meet the residency requirements. According to database searches, one of these voters double voted in 2020, both in Georgia and North Carolina. 527 have registered to vote in a different state, and 296 have voted in their new state after moving, which automatically disqualifies them from voting in Georgia. 154 remain on the Bibb County active voter list. The spreadsheet that I sent in contains registration records documenting Elector moves from our county to another address where they have also registered and where some have voted using one or both registrations. The data sources are from the Georgia Secretary of State voter roll that moved from, the NCOA moving to are from the United States Postal Service, official licensee, and the move to is from Secretary of State voter rolls. An elector registered in a state has filed and a personally signed an NCOA form on this, attesting that they are making a permanent move from the first registration address to a different registered address. Secretary of State voter rolls are sent to the USPS official licensee to determine the USPS unique barcode. The Postal Service has a unique barcode to every address in the U.S. The NCO, the National Change of Address Moving To Address barcode, is compared to the Move To and Registered barcode. Individuals registering at the Moving To address are compared to the names of the persons at the Move From address: first name, middle name, last name, suffix, name, date of birth, gender. If there's a match, the voter roll information from each Secretary of State voter roll is placed on a single line in that file. If the elector has voted at the moving from and or the move to address, and the last election voted is also included in the single line in that spreadsheet. This information was compiled from state and federal source data using the Eagle AI network and an analysis tool. A registered voter's application for a new voter registration, including one submitted via DMV or DDS action, is written proof that they are now a legal resident of the county or state in which they are applying for the new registration. Challengers are only required to present a preponderance of evidence that a registrant has changed their legal residence, and that's for all these challenges, a preponderance of evidence, not beyond a reasonable doubt. They do not have to look them up on the Secretary of State website. They have already downloaded the entire Secretary of State voter roll and looked them up. Further, some states look up websites including social security number, last four of the social security number, full date of birth to inquire. Georgia doesn't provide this information. However, I have looked up a number of these, a sampling of them here, just to show that this is valid data, that they are registered at these places. You cannot do this with every state, you can only do it with some of the states, because you don't have all the information you need to do that. Georgia law, a person shall not be considered to have lost such person's residence who leaves the person's home and moves to another state or county or municipality of the state for temporary purposes only, with the intention of returning, unless such person shall register to vote or perform other acts indicating a desire to change such person's citizens and residence. Since some of these come from the DMV, the registration, as we do have voter, to some of them there. And if you get a driver's license, you have to be a resident of the state. These voters have given us evidence of an out-of-state residence and should be disqualified from voting in Bibb County unless they move back and establish a residence here again. The National Voter Registration Act of 1993, in the section Removal of Names from Voting Roll, says a state shall not remove the name of a registrant from the official list of eligible voters in elections for federal office on the ground that the registrant has changed residence, unless the registrant confirms in writing the registrant has changed residence to a place outside the registrar's jurisdiction in which the registrant is registered. The written documentation in this case is a change of address form, a voter registration, or voting a ballot. Finally, so thank you for the opportunity to present these challenges. Clerk of the voter roll, I'm just asking the Board of Elections to follow the law. The voters are diverse regarding party and other demographics, but all need to establish a residential address in Bibb County. To leave them on the voter roll the way they are invites unlawful votes and disputed elections. Thank you.
So, question, of the 500, I think it's 585, do you know how many of those voters are active and how many are inactive?
How many are active? It didn't, for my purpose, it didn't matter to me whether they were active and inactive. Because they're on the voter roll.
Okay.
If I understand it, to come from an inactive to inactive, all you got to do is show up to vote or submit something to vote and you're moved right to the active list. So what list they're on doesn't material.
So I would submit to you that of that list, 551 of those voters are inactive, according to the Secretary of State's office. Because the Secretary of State has access that we as regular humans do not have access to. Just because my name is Sarah Jackson and I was born in 49, that's the only information that you would have, does not mean that Sarah Jackson, born in 49, can exist in another state. And so those 551 have to remain on the roll as inactive for 2 federal elections.
Is that what I respond to that?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I have several questions here, starting with some for our attorney. Mr. Nolan, are we within 90 days of federal election?
Yes, so there are federal races on the May election.
That's May 21st.
So we're in the quiet period.
And this was filed, I believe, on April 2nd. Did April 2nd also fall within that quiet period?
Yes.
There are 4 exceptions during the quiet period for removal of a voter from the voter rolls during that quiet period. That's a written request from the voter, confirmation of death, confirmation of criminal conviction, or judicial determination of mental incapacity. Do any of those exceptions apply to the list that we have here, to your knowledge?
There's been an acknowledgement that these are all residents.
These are all residents, okay.
And I do have some questions for the challenger. Have you provided us for the 584 voters on that NCOA list, unique identifying information like a driver's license or social security number?
That driver, well, am I the answer?
That's a question for you, yes,
All
sir.
right. So driver's license or social security is information I do not have, and have with other characteristics that I mentioned, all the different ones that would make it an astronomical chance that these people would not be the same when they match in all those different areas. Exact names, dates of birth, and gender, and other.
So dates of birth showing up on multiple databases, or is that coming from the Bibb County voter roll?
It's a comparison between the Secretary of State voter roll and the change of address voter rolls and the state voter registrations in other states.
So are you seeing month, day, year, or are you
In
just?
some cases, you do have the full date of birth. In other cases, you have the year listed, a particular year listed.
So I just want to make clear, and I want everybody in the room to understand. So if William Nolan, I will use you, is William Nolan, and he was born in
74, I'll say.
We don't want to count now.
I should say.
So if he in fact lives in Georgia, but there's another William Nolan in Sarasota, Florida, born in that same year, you have no proof of evidence that these are the same people. Am I correct? Because I do know that the Secretary of State, let me put this out there as well. The Secretary of State fishes these databases frequently. And so I'm assuming that's how 551 of these people got put on the inactive list. So we're circumventing, or we're reworking, because they've already worked this. So I just want to make sure we're in the middle of voting. And I represent the people in Bibb County. And in the middle of voting, we are going through this, what the Secretary of State has already done. And you don't have any unique identifiers, am I correct?
All of those that I have mentioned match up. First name, middle name, last name, suffix name, date of birth, and gender all match up in these particular ones. And the fact that they are inactive here probably indicates that they did move and are not voting in Bibb County at present time, but they could come back and move from inactive to active just by putting in a ballot or showing up.
Madam Chair, if I could reclaim my time, is it possible that some people on this list are temporarily out of state on military orders?
Now, the military would not.
How do you know that? People on military orders may have their mail sent somewhere else.
Well, let me put it this way. If they are military, they should not be registered in two different places. Normally, you register in the military. I was in the military. Well, normally you're registered where your permanent home residence state is, and you vote in that particular state. It would be a very serious breach if a military person was registered in two different places.
Mr. Nolan, yes, sir. Just to be clear, are we required to comply with the provisions of the National Voter Registration Act as a board here?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay. And is it correct that we're in that quiet period right now?
It is, and if, you know, I can elaborate.
Please.
Okay. And part of the reason that the 90-day rule applies and why we're in the quiet period, and this has been said some today, is that this is a systematic review, right? What you would call a systematic review as opposed to an individualized review. And that's what's prohibited. There's a couple of cases that say that. I won't give any kind of lecture on the law, but that's my opinion.
And is it correct that currently that if we suspect the voter may have moved, Our only available course of action right now under NDRA is to send a written confirmation and either hear back from them. If they say, yes, I've moved, then we move them from the rolls. Otherwise, we have to wait 2 federal election cycles. Is that correct?
Yes, if they don't return the card.
Okay. And they're not under any obligation legally to return the card unless they so choose. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Madam Chair, are motions appropriate at this time? I don't want to step on opportunities for my fellow board members.
Doug, I'd like to get, your thoughts and opinions also, on everybody else on, I understand about the 90 days, fully aware of that. But what do we do about the post office box?
So I do have.
Because I think what we do is, if you don't want to proceed, we want to move into this sort of deliberation, which we'll do in front of everybody.
Yeah, let's go into the.
We can make sure there's no other.
Yeah.
I think my
No.
favorite experience with national.
No,
News.
no.
I just wanted to
Right.
make sure that that's discussed.
Yes, sir. And that's why I said, remember, we don't take them, we listen to them all together. We will take them one at a time, okay?
Yeah, and in light of that, I do have one other question for Challenger. Are you aware of the Secretary of State's program project, Vote Safe?
We didn't hear that. Are you aware of Vote Safe? I am not aware of Vote Safe, but I will say this is not the last election, so if it can't be done for this election, then do it for the next election. Clear up the voter roll for the next one. One's coming up in November and a lot after that.
Okay. Thank you.
Just for the record, everybody look, you wanna know what Vote Safe is. Vote Safe is for people who have experienced domestic violence. It allows them to use a post office box or an address where they don't live, so their attacker cannot find them.
Not aware of that.
Yeah, it's called Vote Safe. It's an act or something, I think. So at this time, I'd like to take, let's look at the,
Madam Chairman, I'm so
Oh,
sorry. I know I was interrupting. Maybe just make sure there are no other voters here who.
Oh, yes.
Challenge.
anybody, no, that's not.
That haven't already been addressed.
Are there any other voters out in the hallway that are registered on, and names appear on this list?
Madam Chair, did you hold on for 1 moment while we check some more?
Yes, thank you. My pleasure.
Madam Chair, there's only one name on the list, so I'm assuming there's only one.
Thank you, sir.
My apologies on that.
Okay, so let's take the post office boxes first, okay? So a couple of things that I would say, the burden of proof has not been met from the challenger. We have been made aware that Mercer University uses that address.
Do the post office boxes first?
Excuse me, Lord. Excuse me, Mercer. I was at Mercer's post office box. Mercer, yeah, Mercer first. So, when we have since realized on their website how it's listed, so the floor is open for motions.
Madam Chair, I move that we dismiss the 1501 University Drive challenges on the grounds that we are within quiet periods set by the National Voter Registration Act.
Second.
The motion has been stated and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
It's a brief discussion.
All
Discussion, excuse me, discussion for us, any of us, because I know that was the one
No, I want to discuss the post office.
post office box. Okay, I'm sorry. All right, so no discussion, and restate the motion,
The
please.
motion is to dismiss the 1501 Mercer University Drive challenges on the basis that we are in the 90-day quiet period set under the National Voter Registration Act.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposes? The motion carries. Okay. Mercer University's address, student challenge will be dropped. Next, let's look at the post office box. I'm sorry, the post office box. One comment that I might make, and it's very hard for me to make it. I recently buried my father, and his mail has always been at the same address. We had to send it to a post office box. So just because a resident has a post office box does not mean that they're no longer a resident. All right. Any further discussion?
Well, that's the motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion. I move that with the challenge to, the USPS, EPS, post office box challenge, that, those challenges be dismissed on grounds that we are within the 90-day quiet period set under the National Voter Registration Act.
I will second that with discussion. Mr. No. How do we address the situation?
Well, I think
Because I understand within the 90 days, but I also understand that people have to have a mail, and I understand the situation you're saying about people with defects and things such as that. However, they have to have some sort of mailing address, so that a precinct voting with congressional district and all that. How do we resolve this? Do you make them, do you challenge it somehow? Where, you follow what I'm saying? I'm just trying to come up with an equitable way.
So I would like to have Mr. Ellington amend his amendment to say, we are within the 90-day period. However, we've taken the time to do this and we want to do it right. So is there a way we can put those voters on a challenge? So when they show up to vote, they have to show and prove a physical address. Because again, one thing that I'll also put out for discussion, the voter registration card has physical address, mailing address. Some people accidentally just put in a PO box and don't pay attention to the top. Again, since we are within that 90-day period, because again, we appreciate you bringing this, and we know that an election is coming up soon. Is there a way that we can do that?
Madam Chair, I think the challenge at this point is inappropriate, that, well, because there are a variety of reasons why somebody might have a PO box listed. I have named one, but there are others, and I certainly think it would be appropriate for our staff to try to make contact with people, seek further information. But that is something that staff can do at their discretion. I don't think that requires the separate action from the board. So I would like to keep my motion as it is, which is to dismiss these challenges.
Can we continue this just for 1 second? I understand that we're within the 90 days, and that's why I hate doing anything. But I do think this is something that needs to be addressed, and sooner than later. And so I want to make that comment. I think when people vote, they're going to show up with an ID anyway that's going to show their address and it'll rectify itself. Because when they show their ID, you don't have a post office box, I'm sure.
Madam Chair, when I showed up to vote today, I showed an ID that did not show my address.
Right. That's what I said.
No, it did not.
Right.
I showed a passport.
Right. I understand.
Most forms of ID
And it's
that
acceptable.
are available don't have an address.
That's what it is. Right. I just address as a post office box was right. So I just, yeah, but
I think that's how some of these ended up.
yeah, but what happens if somebody shows up and has a post office? I mean, what kind of value?
I mean,
they can provide, bill from government agency that has the address.
No, I understand. But that's what happens.
There are a couple of things, and this, I'm not speaking from any particular knowledge, but it's my understanding that the way some of these registrations, PO boxes and boxes, some, maybe not all, are because of DDS registrations, right? People go, you may not give it, and so they end up, there is, and this is up for a vote, certainly, I could not state that, Mr. Ellington's motion is not legally proper, it is. There is, if you distinguish between original registration and a change in address, you could argue that the
Do we know if any of these were
NVRA
original
would apply in that situation, but I don't think it would.
Right, so do we know if these were the original address or the change?
It would be something with staff.
Yeah, it's nothing.
So again, I'm not challenging Mr. Ellington's motion in any way. I just.
And Madam Chairwoman, I think it's appropriate to have conversations with staff going forward. I think that this will not be the last challenge that comes through this board ever. We need to look at some best practices or procedures. And I think that, you know, as we get through this federal election, that it's appropriate to do that if the time is right. But my motion is the motion to dismiss these challenges because we're within that 90-day period.
On your own admission, you said that we can ask the staff to reach out and get some other contact information. Why can't we put them on this? When they show up to vote, they provide that information.
I think that we are risking disenfranchising people based on guesswork.
Right,
Right. So we're in that 90-day quiet period. And within the 90-day quiet period, there should be no systematic manipulation of voters. So the motion is there. Do I hear a second?
It was already.
Second. Okay. Call for the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
So two opposed, Mr. Abbott, were you opposed?
Two opposed? Two opposed and three. All right, so that one has been dismissed. And to the matter of the last one, where there are 585, but only 551 people are active. So that means about 33 of those people are on the active list. 551 are inactive, 33 are active. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have substantive concerns with this one. The National Change of Address Registry is notorious for false positives. Secretary of State's office uses the ERIC system. Georgia is still a member of that. And the ERIC system is much more reliable. So I would have concerns outside the 90-day period. But again, we're within the 90-day quiet period under NVRA. So I would move that we dismiss the NCOA challenges on that basis.
There's a motion on the floor.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Call for the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. I would call for us to adjourn. Thank you all for supporting us, and we're happy voting. All right.
No voter suppression. No.